Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this early information science, the next episode in our Power of Product Data series. Today, we're going to talk about one product. Not familiar with this series. Essentially, every episode we take a little bit of a deep dive into a small, specific component of information architecture and content strategy. My name is Jason Heim. I'm the Director of Delivery here, and I'm joined today by Chantal Schweizer. She's our Principal Taxonomist, a maven in product taxonomy and information architecture. And today we're here to talk about the concept of mutual exclusivity, in particular as it applies to product taxonomies and browse trees, or however you may choose to call them. We're going to focus on why mutual exclusivity is so important when going into digital, and we'll highlight a couple examples of some of the ways in which mutual exclusivity is really important in growing your business and how it can help you do things like get bigger orders, reduce the odds that a customer is going to leave your site because they're confused or not sure where to go. And we're also going to talk a little bit about how mutual exclusivity makes it easier to load product more quickly, because in B2B, obviously, very few people make and sell their own products. If you're a distributor, you want to get more product from your suppliers. If you're a supplier, you want to get more of your product to your distributors. Mutual exclusivity can really help that. Before we jump in, feel free to we have a little poll over on the right-hand side there. We're really just looking for a sense of, hey, where are you in your transition? Are you just getting started and you're trying to kind of figure out your first few steps, or are you already somebody who's digitally savvy and just looking for maybe some ways to keep your skills sharp? So with that in mind, Chantal, I know this is a topic you're really passionate about. Why don't you just give us a quick primer. What is mutual exclusivity?
All right, so on the most basic level, it's the concept that a product has one and only one home in a taxonomy, and that taxonomy being the collection of categories that represent the products that you sell on your website. So let's say we're shopping for produce and we're looking for lemons. In this case, we have a very clear pathway to citrus fruits: produce, lemon, citrus fruits, and that is where we're going to find our lemons. They're not melons. So there is a path with absolutely no confusion. And this sounds very basic and obvious, but the exclusion of mutual exclusivity happens all the time.
Yeah, we see this regularly when we're helping with clients. So what happens if it's not mutually exclusive?
All right, well, let's look at our example here. So we're shopping for lemons in a produce taxonomy that has chosen to go to the dark side, and they do not use mutual exclusivity. So some of the problems that we're going to see pop up right off the bat, we're starting off fine, produce and fruit, but then we see three maybe categories. Lemons could be citrus fruits. They could be sour fruits. They could be yellow fruits. They could be in all of these doorways, but you have to dive into each of these doors to find out which one actually holds the lemons that you're looking for. And that uncertainty can lead to frustration and then even site abandonment. So it really is the path to the e-commerce dark side.
Right. And also, when you think about it, right, the way that you present your product categories to your customers is one of the signs that customers use to evaluate, hey, does this company know what they're talking about? Are they clear in terms of the differences between these types of products? So when we talk about, the challenge of trying to keep customers from abandoning, if your customers look at your categories and they say, well, this thing I'm looking for could be in 3 different places, maybe this company doesn't really understand it. It's setting yourself up for a hard push to actually close that business.
Very true. You want to be seen as the expert in your products. So if we look at a live example of where we see this in real life, now here is a really great example of this, of mutual exclusivity, I'm going to keep stumbling over that word, is used in real life. So we're going to carded power tools, and then we're looking for a belt sander. It's clearly not a grinder. It's not a rotor. It's not a drill. It is definitely a power sander. So it is very clear where you need to go to take your next step through your navigation.
Yeah, it's funny how mutual exclusivity kind of helps you think about what categories you present at the same time. Sometimes, in this case, certainly belt sanders is clearly a fit for power sanders, but the other thing that mutual exclusivity drives is it makes it very clear that belt sanders are not going to be in any of the other categories. So you have this mix of benefits. One is it makes it clear where to go, but it also makes it clear where you don't go.
It is very, very clear path to the product so you can purchase it. And now if we look on the other side, we see a good representative example of a missed opportunity where mutual exclusivity could really help a website. And in this case, we don't see it. So Jason, what is your first reaction when you see this set of categories?
Yeah, I mean, this is one where there's a lot of maybe choices, right? So if I'm looking for a particular electrical clutch, if I'm just looking for a clutch, right? Then it may be in electrical brake and clutch, or what is other brake and clutch? If the parent category is electrical clutch and brake products, doesn't that imply that everything below it, every subcategory, is also electrical? Well, if that's the case, then what goes in other brake and clutch that isn't already in electrical brake and clutch? I've created this confusion about where to go, and that adds that uncertainty, and that adds doubt, and makes people sort of say, well, I don't know if this is really where I want to go to buy that product. What about you? What do you see here?
Well, definitely, again, that other. I always see that as a big red flag that there is a problem in your taxonomy. If you have a miscellaneous, non-specific category, like other or miscellaneous, you really have no idea what's in there or what the horrors that may lie within. It really could be a complete free-for-all of the type of products that may be in there. And then another one I see is, so they have electrical enclosures, and then they have electrical enclosures non-metallic. So then you have to make a big assumption there. Does that mean that all the electrical enclosures are metallic rather than non-metallic, or are they a hodgepodge of both? There's just a lot of uncertainty as to what might actually live in that category.
Well, and to your point, all right, so I have an enclosure I have electrical enclosures. I have electrical enclosures non-metallic. All right, so I can assume then, based on those choices, that everything that's in electrical enclosure must be metallic. So I've got everything that's a metallic enclosure, everything that's a non-metallic enclosure, but then we have this category for other enclosures. All right, well, if it's not made of metal and it's not made of non-metal, what's left to make an enclosure out of?
Very, very true.
This is the kind of experience we regularly see when we're going in to discuss a taxonomy project with a client, right? Like this is very familiar to me when I sit down and I look at a client's taxonomy for the first time, and I start walking them through their taxonomy. One of the things that I'll do is when you really kind of test drive, when you do a store walk of your site, you walk people to a level 2 or 3 levels into their taxonomy, and you start to see examples like this, and you just start to ask the client, hey, all right, where would I find this? Where would I find this? And taxonomy is one of those concepts in content strategy that people think about in theory very differently than when they think about it in sort of a real-world application. Like, it's one thing to think about, hey, here's all the product categories that you sell. It's another thing to think about, all right, let's think about going through this SKU by SKU. Do you have a home for this? Do you have a home for this? Where would you go to look at this? Where would you go to look at this? When you apply it to those sort of real product examples, that's when people have that sort of aha moment of, oh, wait, you know what? Yeah, we don't really have a place for this. Or, oh, you know what? Yeah, I guess your non-expert customer hat, right? It's one thing to have these conversations with a bunch of product managers who are all experts in the lingo and the jargon, It's another thing to have this conversation when you kind of put on that persona of, all right, I'm Al the maintenance engineer, or I'm Daniel the design engineer, or I'm Paul the purchasing assistant. Each one of them is going to look at your taxonomy a little bit differently, and it's really important to do that kind of customer journey mapping to make sure that mutual exclusivity is not something that is a problem. Even with on day one, you might think you've covered it, but when you start kind of really applying those SKU level evaluations, it may not be gone.
Yeah, very true. Let's take a look at how this affects the product detail page. So what do you see where mutual exclusivity affects this? How does this negatively affect product detail pages when you don't have mutual exclusivity?
Yeah, when you have nodes that aren't, or categories that aren't mutually exclusive, then what ends up happening is they get oftentimes assigned and managed by different people, and those different people then create different rules around what attributes are going to be accounted for in that node. So here you have an example of what this might look like. I've got 2 carbide inserts here from 2 different suppliers. One is in a category where that product manager has really created a lot of specificity around attributes, and the other one, maybe it's managed by somebody who's new, they're not as much of an expert. As a result, now if I'm a customer, not only is it hard for me to compare these products because I have to go one category and look at this one, another category and look at this one, but the points of comparison are now different. The governance that's in place here to manage this has now made comparing and finding these products even harder than it really needs to be.
Yeah, and it also causes additional work on the back end. Now you're managing 2 sets of schema, which are your collection of attributes for a category that you may not necessarily need to be managing separately, and that can really cause a nightmare when you manage them separately. Then it causes duplication. It causes issues just like this, where we're seeing one with a really light set of attributes. And you want that governance and rulebook in place to make sure that you're providing all the information necessary to make a good purchasing decision.
In one place, exactly.
Yeah.
These should be in one category. If these were in one category, that would be a lot easier.
Very true.
All right, so what's our point, Chantal?
So there's some big benefits of going with mutual exclusivity and making sure that has a key role in your navigation taxonomy. Which one would you say is your key benefit?
I mean, one of my favorites is and we touched on it a little bit earlier, is the impact it has on governance, right? If I have one category that all of this product is held in, now I can create a governance process and tools that kind of keep that a lot cleaner with a lot less effort. A lot easier to manage it if it's just in one place. I'm also a big fan of how much easier it makes to share data. So if I have one place for all of my product of a certain type, that makes it a lot easier for me to share that data with my distributors or my manufacturers. If they have one product in one place, I want to have one place for that product as well. That really helps.
Yeah, and that's one that people don't always think of, and it's a really, really important factor. I guess the one that I would raise up as a really big win here is that it makes it very efficient and clear to get to the product as fast as you can get to it. If they can't find it, they can't buy it. So you want to get your customers there as quickly as possible so they're more likely to put that product in their cart.
Yeah, and if the faster they can find it, the faster they buy it, right?
Very
true.
So in
terms of like next steps, right, we've talked about a couple of things. If you have a taxonomy, test it. Use your existing SKUs. If you don't have a taxonomy, make sure that you're building one with mutual exclusivity in mind. And then regardless, once you have it, have a governance process in place. Go back and look at the taxonomy, assess it on a regular basis, and make sure every time somebody comes to you and wants to add a new one, you vet it. So those are sort of the 4 takeaways. Hey, take some time to join us for the next episode. Next one, it's getting more than 1,000 words from your product images. How can you work to use your product images in a way to create some differentiation in the market and to really think strategically about how it can drive your customer experience? If you go down to the presenter to presenter, let's see here, it's the presenter to audience announcements. I think we'll be posting that link there, and in fact we have, so feel free to go ahead and register now. But again, I'm Jason Hine, and I'm here with
Chantal Kloiber.
And we are here from EIS. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time around.
Thanks a lot.